Hello, today I would like to talk to you about working on your electronic ADA delivery box. I have set mine up here on the workbench so that you can get a little bit better look at it as I point out the parts. And you can see that there are, on the bottom here, there is 2 slots for screws. And then up on the top, there's hooks where the box would hook in the machine. So essentially the box hooks in the machine, you put it in, and then down at the bottom you put the screws in and your box is in place. So to get it out on the bench to work on it like this, you need to remove those screws, lift it up out of the door. On the side there are the 3 harnesses that you would need to unplug. This one is the harness for the vent sensors, eye vent sensors. This is a harness for the motors, and then there are going to be a couple little wires that run the lights for the box. Now the first thing I'd like to take a look at is the eye vent sensors themselves. If we were looking at this from inside the delivery door, or the door of the machine, you would see it like this. And on this side there is the eye vent sensor that is a normal one like any machine would have, and then nested on the back of it is a second sensor board. The second sensor board runs the 4 sensors that are down inside the delivery box. It'll be kind of hard to see, but you can see one over here. Let me point at it. And one over there. And then on the other side, there's one right here and one right there. All right, so let's take a look at this, these sensors. Like I said before, the sensors in here are just like the ones that would be in any of our standard machines, except that on the ones with this delivery box with the assisted lift, there's a second board that is nested on the back of the first board that actually runs those 4 sensors we looked at that are down below. So inside of there are 3 screws that hold this assembly together. I'm going to take those out and then show you the boards themselves. All right, so I have my 3 screws out, and I gently just work this cover off. And what you'll see is that one of these boards stays on here, the regular eye vent board, and then this second board that is nested on back comes off with the cover. And there's some pins here that go into a socket right here. So when you go to put it back, you have to line those up and carefully push it back together. All right, you want to make sure that these 2 harnesses are in place. You can unplug this one like this here, and to get this one off, you need to take the board off of the standoffs. All right. So it is important that both of these boards, or excuse me, both of these harnesses are plugged in correctly and pressed all the way on. All right. Now, when I go to put this back on here, these pins need to go in this socket. So I will put this up here as good as I can, and then I will look through this little cutout here to make sure that I am aligned. And I'll push the board on there so it has good contact. And I'll put my screws back in. All right, now continuing on with talking about the sensor boards, if we look down further on the side, you should be able to see one of the lower sensors. And the harness comes down and then plugs into the bottom. Now all 4 sensors have a similar arrangement where a harness comes down and plugs into each one of these boards individually. You can take these clips off by loosening and removing this nut. And then from that point you can pull the little harness off. Now, if you replace these boards or are inspecting the wiring to make sure that everything's plugged in good, take special note that these are plugged in on the right pins. It's possible to offset these so one of the pins maybe doesn't get plugged in all the way. So I'll take it and line it up very carefully and then plug it back in. And like I said, all 4 of these sensors have a similar arrangement, and it's important if you're having problems to check all 4 of these and make sure all 4 of them are plugged in on the board correctly where all the pins are being utilized. All right, let's take a look at the other side and the motor that drives the automatic door. So on this side of the box, you'll see that there's a motor and a large black wheel and a small white wheel. When this motor is turned on, this large wheel turns, and as it spins, it pushes up on this small white wheel, and that is what opens up the door. Now, when you're looking at this, you want to make sure that this wheel, the small one, is in line with the black wheel. So if I turn it like this, and if this arm was bent or out of place in some way where it wasn't hitting the wheel correctly, let's say it was like this, when this large wheel turned, it wouldn't properly push up on this and your door would not open. So you want to make sure that that is aligned correctly, and it should be. There's not a whole lot of adjustment here. There is a screw that you could take out right here to take this arm off to work on it in case it had gotten bent badly or something. But besides that, it's just a matter of bending it a little bit one way or the other to ensure that it is in that proper position. Now, how does the door know to open and close and where to stop? If we look right through here, let me turn it around, you can see that there is a switch. Now that switch, when this wheel turns, there are some divots that the switch goes into or out of depending on where the wheel is. And that's how it determines where it is in the cycle. If your door opens and it doesn't seem like it's stopping where it should or going closed to where it should, you can adjust that switch. This plate, these two screws here, if you loosen them, will allow this whole plate to move up and down. And in doing so, that essentially adjusts how close or how far away the switch is to the wheel and the divots. So what I usually do is I'll have somebody run the door open and close, and I will sit there and take a look at, is this switch being pushed down and let up at the right time, and then adjust this accordingly. All right, let's take a closer look at the bottom of the bin. This is the floor of the delivery box. And when a vent is made and the lift starts to rise, that's the part that actually comes up. On either side, there is a motor over here and a motor over here. And these motors run in unison to lift that delivery box up squarely. If it comes to a point where those motors are out of agreement with each other, one side may be higher than the other. It may be in a situation where it's actually bound up, where it will not move. What you can do in that case is you can simply gently take your hand and push that down to the bottom of the box. Just take your hand and push it down, and the motors will slowly spin and allow you to get it down so it is leveled out. From that point, I would power cycle the machine, and the delivery box will go through the reset process, and it should go back to where it needs to be. The door will run, the delivery box floor will lift and come back, and you should be back in business. If not, then, like we were talking before with the VIN sensors, it could be that one of the motors has become unplugged. If you look over here, there are a couple of wires on each motor. Check those two there. And then on this side, there's a similar circumstance. There's a wire and there's a wire there. The other situation that can happen is if the delivery box, when the door was open, has been hit by something and jarred one way or the other, the back of these motor boards can come in contact with one of the stiffening braces inside the door. So normally the back of these motors would be about this far away from the stiffening braces. If the box has been pushed one way or the other, it could be like this, actually be more like that, and it could short that motor out and it would stop running. If you see a situation like that, Loosen up those screws on the bottom. These nuts that hold the delivery box in place, and just move the delivery box over so it's no longer coming in contact with anything inside the machine. If one of these motors has gone bad, to replace the motor, you will need to remove these, and then remove these, and of course unplug your wiring, and you can take this piece off. There's my motor right there. I'll unplug my wires. There is this little white box on the end of the motor that turns and hits a switch. That'll come off of there, but if you look at it, there's only one way to put it back on. Have to make sure you're not knocking the switch over. All right. All right, well, once we have those off of there, this piece with the motor will come out, and you still have the arm connected. Just slide that to the side. And you have the motor out of there. If you had a new motor that you wanted to replace, you just have to undo these screws, take it off of this metal piece. If you needed to replace this plastic piece here, if it got broken, it just snaps apart and then snaps it back on there. Oops. To get it back in, line up the little track. It's kind of hard to do with just one hand, but there it goes in. Get it back on the studs for the take your cover. Well, let me plug my wire back in first. And then my other one. All right. Take my cover, put it on, put my P-clips back on. there it's back on. Now I would like to point out that I did this all up on the bench so it was easy to show you guys on the video. You can work on it when it's in the machine. It's harder to get some of these things out because being inside the machine itself will block you a little bit. These wires are long enough that sometimes I will take a box, lift it out of the door, and then find a small box to set this on so it's right there plugged into the machine to work on it that way. But it is pretty easy to just unplug and take it to the bench and inspect all the pieces. I guess next we'll look at the programming and running the box in service mode. Alright, I wanted to show you guys that if you look in this notch, and this is a box that's installed in a machine, there is a green indicator light, and right now it is blinking. If those eyes cannot see across the box, or if there's something breaking the beam, that light will either be off or blinking like you see it right now. Let me put my screwdriver in there and see if I can get it to go all the way off. Yeah, there it goes. That light's a little hard to see, but if you get down and really take a look, you should be able to spot it. Alright, we've moved over to the side so that you can see the regular iVent sensor indicator light. If I put my hand in front of the sensors, that light will go out just like on that green light that was on the side. Alright, now we're going to go over going through service mode and the functions that are available to you to work on your delivery box. The very first thing in service mode, here I have my motor count. If I press the number 2, so it does a motor count again, it will run the door and the delivery lift. Alright, from there, if I go to 0, which will put us in diagnostics, and then press 0 again, I will get in a menu called peripherals. And I press number 2, and it comes up with auto door. It has two choices. I can press 1 or 2. Pressing 1 will open the door, and then pressing 2 will close the door. I'll use the star key to back up one spot, peripherals. I'll press number 3, and then this will manually run the delivery lift either up or down. By using these features, you can test whether your delivery box will run, whether you can manually open the door or manually raise and lower the lift. Now I'm going to use the star button to back up a couple spots. There I am peripherals, there I am diagnostics, one more, and I'm back to motor count. From here I'm going to press number 4 for configuration, and then 0 to get in advanced configuration. To go in advanced configuration, you have to enter the password. The password is 2314. Alright, advanced config. From this point I will push 0. I have another menu that says peripherals, and if I press number 2, it says auto lift button. What that means is that the auto lift will run after a customer makes a vend when they push the blue button. If I edit that by pressing number 2, I can have it go to auto, which means that every vend that occurs, the auto lift will run. Or I can press it again and it'll go to off. If I leave it in the off position, this is useful if I'm having trouble with my delivery bin. I can turn it off and it will not run or try to run while you work on it, or let's say you need to get a new motor or some parts. You can set it on this setting and the machine is in service, and you can use it while you're waiting to repair the lift. Of course, whatever I want to save it to, let's say that I want to save it to button, I get it to the setting I want and I push the pound button, and that locks in that setting. And then I'll push the star to back all the way out,